Hey guys, my name is Allan. Today we're giving my friends an in-depth tour of September 11th, 2001, the events prior, the events leading up, and the aftermath and how it still affects us today. Come along, children. We'll take you along. So, Osama bin Laden, many people think he was from Afghanistan. It's incorrect. He was Saudi Arabia. He was a son of a very wealthy Saudi CEO, I guess we'll say. His father owned a construction company, but they built like palaces for the Saudis. So you're building the homes for like the royal family kind of thing. So he's like extremely wealthy. He was born in 57, and we take into account what like the geopolitical climate looked like in 57. People at the time thought democracy brings peace, it brings protection against evil. On the other side of the token, you have the Middle East, where they despise capitalism, they despise democracy, and they see it as the evil. He grows up pretty normal in the sense of like he enjoys like Western media. He was like a very sexual guy, so he had very like strong sexual tendencies like from as a kid. So here's a picture. Osama, he's gonna be about 14 right here. This is a far cry, right, from the pictures we've all ever seen of him, and kind of like the cave, kind of like the very, simple clothing. But here this is very vibrant, very colorful. It's very different because again, his upbringing was not too far from what we would have grown up like in the 70s. The important thing about his dad being very wealthy is that gave him resources, financial resources. Not as much power because he didn't have any political power. His family didn't have any political power, but they had a lot of money. So does anyone know what radicalization is? Basically take a belief to the utmost extreme by any cost. So the thing I really wanted to inform is what radicalized him against Western civilization. What made him despise? What made him want to attack? Some of his reasons were the Americans' huge support for countries like Israel. So that's one big one. The second one is there was a war between 1979 to 1989. There was a war between the Soviet Union and Afghanistan. But remember, Osama bin Laden is Saudi Arabian. He's not from Afghanistan. But the reason Osama moved to Afghanistan is because while he was growing up, and again, he's growing up with he's listening to very normal media, music, Western civilization music. He hasn't been radicalized yet, but he comes across this man named Abdullah Yusuf, or Abdullah Azam. And Abdullah Azam, he's very big on what's called jihad. Jihad is essentially waging war. That's not the official definition, but that's how I perceive it. Waging war against anyone who's against or not for spreading Muslim culture, essentially. So here's one of his quotes, just to sum it up. Jihad and the rifle alone, period. No negotiations, no conferences, and no dialogue. So his ideology is basically, we will do whatever we need to do to spread what we believe by any means necessary. They interpret it to be physical. They interpret it to be, if we need to go to war, if we need to kill people, then so be it. We need to spread what we believe. And that kind of sets the foundation for Osama to be radicalized and for him to start seeing Western civilization in a different light, because at this time, he's saying, okay, the Soviet war just happened against Afghanistan. American forces, why are they in the Middle East? Why are they here? Who are these people? This is our holy land. This is our area. You guys stay over there, we're here. There's no need for you guys to be here. Any questions so far? Yes.
How old was he when he was introduced to?
So right after college. So he's 19, 20. So I think it's safe to say right out of college, a lot of people are trying to find their direction, what am I gonna do? And he's the same way. He's working for his dad at the time. He's working in the family business. And I think the estimate at the time, right out of college and the years leading up to him being out of college, he's making around I think they said $2 million a year, but we're talking late 1970s money. So that's whatever that is, $10, $20 million a year. And you're 23, 24 years old. So the guy's got a lot of money. And again, his family's very well. So in one year, he has Abdullah Azam kind of radicalizing him and telling him, you need to identify the enemy, identify what they're doing wrong, and how you can contribute to our bigger picture. And he's like, okay, I've got this. Now I've got to identify what are the things that I'm going to find that I disagree with. So again, he's disagreeing with Western civilization's support for things like supporting the country of Israel. And the biggest thing is that you have to remember that very traditional Muslim culture, we perceive that as very oppressive. So during this time, they ban education on women. They have to wear like very specific clothing. It's very oppressive to specifically women, but just their societies in general. So when they see Western civilization at the time, you're thinking 1980s, there's women in bikinis, there's women, whatever you can imagine. So they see that as like a big no-no. It's haram. It's all sinful. And you have to think, if the US was never physically in their country, they would say, I don't care. They can do whatever they want. They're in their country. We're in our country. We can do whatever I want. The problem they have is that now Western civilization is starting to have boots on the ground in their holy country. So they're like, we don't want these men that are here. It's not women that are there, but we don't want these men here that could potentially be spreading their Western ideologies to our people here. And they kind of see it as like an infection. We don't want this virus to be here and infiltrate our holy ideology, etc., etc. Now he's kind of identified Western civilization as the enemy. And in the years leading up to 2001, so this really starts in like 1990, the CIA starts to identify Osama bin Laden as not a threat yet, but they identify him as a person of interest, shall we say. And from the decade of 1990 to 2000, he wages jihad against Western civilization. So he basically wages holy war against Western civilization. It's an official declaration. But again, at the time, people in the government here are aware that he has declared war against the US. But you have to remember that these people like Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda, they're seen as like a ragtag group. They're just like some guys in the mountains, probably don't have much money or resources.
Has he joined al-Qaeda at the time? Is he just some like political figure? Or?
So he created al-Qaeda in late 1980s. So he creates al-Qaeda, and al-Qaeda translates to the base. And they mean the base as in like, we're a collective group of people against essentially Western civilization and just democracy in general. So they're like, they're trying to become an international group to attack democracy and Western civilization internationally, not just here in the US, but anywhere in general. A key point is that when Afghanistan was at war with the Soviet Union, Osama bin Laden at this point was physically radicalized. He felt a need to physically go and fight the good war. So he joins the fight with the Afghans. And remember, he's from Saudi Arabia, but he goes to Afghanistan because that's where the war is at the time. He sees this as like my calling. This is my opportunity to go and fight the good war that I've just been radicalized against. So it's funny because he joins the war pretty late. This is a 10-year war, and he joins the war, I think 8.5 years into the war. So it's at the tail end of the war. And he basically finds himself in a position of leadership. He kind of like shimmies his way into a position of militant leadership. And he does help win the war. They do defeat the Soviet Union, but he didn't really do much. He's kind of just like part of the group picture, if you will. But that feeds his ego. Now he's like, oh, I'm like a militant leader. Like I won the war for us. But he really didn't. He has no experience. He's a very egotistical person, so he has this like sense of like super self-worth because he thinks he won this war. So he's radicalized. He thinks he's won this war against the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union then collapses, which is a very big event. So again, he thinks, I basically helped collapse the Soviet Union. I have a lot of power. I have a lot of influence. Now I have a lot of fans. These people look up to me. Now let's go for the real Western civilization. Now let's go for countries like Israel, countries like the US.
How does he come on the United States radar to begin with, and what is the significance of al-Qaeda at that?
Okay, yeah. So he came onto the Americans' radar because he was doing public interviews. He gives an interview, and there's a real video of it, obviously. And it's funny because he gives the interview, and one would think, if I'm interviewing Sarah, I ask Sarah a question, Sarah responds, somebody translate, because I speak English, somebody translates, they tell me what Osama just said, and then it's the back and forth. But Osama wanted no translator because this is his official declaration of war against Western civilization. Now, how the US received this is, again, who are these people? They do what? They've never done anything. They don't have money. There's like 5 guys in a cave. We're not worried about that. These guys are just talking crazy, 10,000 miles away. It's not that serious. I don't know what they're talking about. And in actuality, this is an international, I don't know the number at the time, but you're talking about probably 15 plus countries where people from al-Qaeda are stationed internationally, and thousands, maybe tens of thousands at the time. So they're not a small group, and they're not poor. Like, remember, Osama is funding this himself. He is extremely wealthy. So he's funding this movement from his own pockets. Now Osama's like, all right, we won this war. I have all this money. I'm starting to build a following. I have a lot of people who are willing to die for this cause. Now let's do something significant here. So in 1998, there was a US embassy bombing in Nairobi. So al-Qaeda members planted bombs at US embassies in Nairobi, and at the same time they also planted one in Dar es Salaam. I honestly don't know where that is, but they basically blew up 2 embassy bombings. And this is significant because some American people do die. It's like 5 or 6 people for each bombing, so it's nothing big. But now the US is like, okay, this is bad. Yes, some American people died. Yes, they blew up some of our Americans. I'm still not worried about it though. Like this is, they perceived it to be like this was their big thing. Like, this is as bad as it will get. So they were like a little ragtag group. Yes, they blew up our embassies. We'll keep an eye, but not too worried that it's gonna get big. Kind of just seems like a small suicide bomb. So that's 1998. The CIA gets involved, the FBI gets involved, but they don't want to put a lot of resources into it because it's not their greatest concern. So the CIA creates a group called Alex Station. Alex Station is a small team of, I believe, 5 to 6 CIA agents, and their sole purpose is to focus on bin Laden. They start putting together everything I've just told you about the fact that, oh wait, he actually has money. Oh wait, there actually is like a pretty big movement. They start to get concerned. So this is 1998. This is 3 years before September 11th. They're starting to be concerned, and they're collecting all this information, and they're like, okay, I actually think this guy's a problem. So they start throwing it up the command. Now they're telling their senior officials, hey guys, Osama's actually, this could be bad. Like, he's pretty crazy. Like, he's declared war against us. And I actually don't think these bombings are the most they could do. That's just them telling the US, we will hurt you, back up. It's just like a warning shot, essentially. CIA doesn't believe it. They're like, guys, come on, let's be real. This is not serious. They're a small group. They don't buy it. 2 years go by. Alex Station is getting increasingly more concerned about not just Osama bin Laden, but the al-Qaeda movement in general. Year 2000, the USS Cole is stationed in Yemen, close to the dock, not right on the dock, but pretty close. And they see a small boat approaching. It seems like friendly guys. They're waving. They're like, oh, maybe these guys are just coming to say hi or whatever. And it's actually a suicide mission. And the boat is full of explosives. The guys are strapped with explosives. They basically suicide bombed the ship. I think 13 Americans died. No one else was hurt really other than Americans and the suicide bombers themselves, because again, obviously the ship was in the water. So now that's significant because now Alex Station is like, we're trying to tell you guys, these guys are serious. This is another event. There's more Americans that were killed. This is not a joke. CIA is still not, they're still like, guys, this is the most they can do. Just these little bombings as they see it. The CIA is worried about like big big events. They're worried about like nuclear events, nuclear bombings. And again, Alex Station is like ringing the alarm. They're sounding the alarm because, again, American troops dying is not a small thing, especially around this time. So now the FBI starts to get involved, and they also catch wind of Osama and al-Qaeda, and they also start to say, okay, this is actually also a problem. Again, the bigger portion of government they're not buying it. They still don't think this is serious. Although at this time, between the 2 U.S. embassy bombings and the suicide bombing on the ship, there's probably 30, 40 Americans that have died directly from efforts of al-Qaeda. And now the FBI is catching wind of this. There's one agent in particular, his name is John O'Neill, and he's basically on the same page as Alex Station. He's also agreeing with them. Yeah, this guy is not good. But the difference between the CIA and the FBI, their efforts and how they collect intelligence and how they collect their info is different because they have different permissions. When the USS Cole was bombed, the FBI showed up because they're like, okay, perfect. We can take care of this case. We can start to gather evidence and we can start to create our case to show to the higher ups. And they actually get kicked off, and the CIA is actually put in charge of the bombing. So now the FBI is pissed because they're like, wait, we're on the same page as you. We also want this info. Let's work together. Give me your info on this guy. We'll give you our info. We'll make a collective effort and present it so that the government can start taking this seriously. This is where the shortcomings of either intelligence agency came. I think the CIA wanted credit for eventually capturing bin Laden and eventually preventing him from doing anything. So the CIA withheld any information from the FBI, but the FBI is like begging for information. They're telling the CIA, please give me your information because we have other information together. We can make a big effort. Where the CIA says, no, can't touch it. We're not talking to you. I'm not sharing any info with you. So John O'Neill, which he's a very high up in the FBI, he's frustrated because he knows also, again, how serious this is. The only thing that you can say to their credit is at the time, there is no systems that allow CIA and FBI to share information because a lot of things are classified on both ends, right? So you can't, even though yes, you're both part of American efforts and same team, they're not allowed to share information because they're classified on each end. That's the only thing where I could kind of say fair. So that's 2000. So now John O'Neill, Alex Station, they're making like the biggest effort possible because now they're starting to intercept intelligence, and now they're starting to intercept communications within al-Qaeda about we're going to attack the US. There's no plan of September 11th specifically just yet, but they're like, we're gonna do something big. We have the money, we have the people, we're gonna do something big. So they start trying to like brainstorm, what are we gonna do? What kind of attack are we gonna do? And a big one that people in America and American intelligence thought was gonna happen was at the turn of the 21st century, so on 2000, New Year's Eve or New Year's Day of 2000, they thought when the ball drops, something is gonna happen. Times Square, something like that. Nothing happened. August 6th, 2001, the president to this day gets, it's called PDB's Presidential's Daily Briefing. And all the intelligence agencies basically create like a packet that they give the president every day. And they put, it's kind of like the newspaper for him. And they give him the most important and the most urgent intelligence about basically anything on a daily basis. So the CIA is like continuously, like they have the most power to get to the president. So they're putting in his daily briefing titles like, and I'm not getting them exact, but there's something like bin Laden and al-Qaeda, serious threat to the US, bin Laden and al-Qaeda, planning attack in the coming years, bin Laden, al-Qaeda, al-Qaeda. For whatever reason, the American government, the president, the government in general is not taking it seriously. August 6th, 2001, Presidential's Daily Brief titled, quote, bin Laden determined to strike the US. At this time, all the intelligence agencies, they're on extremely high alert. because they start getting intelligence about things like there's going to be a big wedding. That's what like the al-Qaeda like conversations are like, which is essentially code word for big event, big attack. I'm going to show you guys now. This was declassified 4 years after 2001. Richard Clark, I want to say he's like director of the counterterrorism. He's director or head of something counterterrorism, right? So they have a meeting, and this is an official document. Was released in 2005. Quote, just some terrorist group, question mark? Al-Qaeda is the active, organized, major force that is using a distorted version of Islam and its vehicle to achieve two goals. One, to drive the US out of the Muslim world, forcing the withdrawal of our military and economic presence in countries from Morocco to Indonesia. Two, to replace moderate, modern, Western regime in Muslim countries with theocracies modeled along the lines of the Taliban. Al-Qaeda affects centrally our policies on Pakistan, Afghanistan, Central Asia, North Africa. Leaders in Jordan and Saudi Arabia see Al-Qaeda as a direct threat to them. This is almost a year before 9/11. So this is about as blaring as it gets and about as concise as it gets. He wrote the warning thread in like 4 sentences. The last thing I'll show you, this is from a good podcast.
That same week, on the 4th of September 2001, the Bush National Security Team meets for the first time to discuss al-Qaeda. And Richard Clark, who is the senior counterterrorism advisor at the White House, has sent Condoleezza Rice a personal note before the meeting, writing, quote, decision makers should imagine themselves on a future day when hundreds of Americans lay dead in several countries, including the US. What would those decision makers wish that they had done earlier? That future day could happen at any time.
It's a chilling thing to say, isn't it? Just one.
Guys, this is 1 week before September 11th. And the document I just showed you, Richard Clark, that was written in January 25th, 2001. The video I just played you is a quote from 1 week before 9/11. He's telling these people, take this seriously. Hundreds of Americans could be dead, and it could be because of you guys. Please take this seriously. September 6th, 2001. At this time, the president, higher ups in the CIA, higher ups in the FBI, and those organizations in general are not taking this seriously. They're yet to take any action. They're yet to put any more resources and time other than the small group of Alex Station, which again is compiled of like 4 or 5 CIA agents. That's all they have to fight potential al-Qaeda threats. September 6th. Okay. Ready? Okay. On September 11th, 2,977 people died on that day, and thousands more would die in the decades after from long-term effects from inhalation of all the smoke and fumes and whatnot of the day, lung cancer. In the days following 9/11, of course, the CIA, FBI are like, we need to find the people that were associated with this. The easiest way is to trace the hijackers that were clearly staged in here in the US. They find a paper trail to an apartment where 2 of the hijackers were living in the months leading up to 9/11. So they start going through basically who else can we find that's attached to these guys, who else helped the concerted effort for the attacks. They go through the rental agreement of this apartment in San Diego, and they find somebody was a guarantor of these 2 guys for the apartment. Who was that guy? His name is Omar al-Bayoumi. So they're like, okay, let's find this Omar al-Bayoumi guy. They find him in the UK. They go to the UK. They invade his apartment. And what they find is, well, they interview him. And as they're interviewing him, and he's innocent until proven guilty, because technically at this point, this Omar al-Bayoumi guy is just co-signed for these 2 hijackers on the apartment. So for all we know, he could have actually not known what they were going to do, could have just been friends. They sit him down and they discover he's also a Saudi national, kind of like Osama bin Laden. And I think 15 of the 19 hijackers were also from Saudi Arabia. It's kind of a lot of guys from Saudi Arabia, I don't know. But they sit this Omar al-Bayoumi guy down and they say, all right, before we start this interview, are you aware that this interview is being audio and video recorded? And he says, well, I'll need to talk to the Saudi embassy first. You need permission? So what are you hiding? What's going on? The way international law works is basically they're in the UK, so it's basically in the jurisdiction of the UK police and UK detectives. But because this is like they're investigating a crime committed on domestic territory, the FBI are the ones interrogating the guy. So they have a 7-day window. Give you 7 days. If in that 7 days you can provide like concrete evidence or reason to believe that this guy's involved, you can extradite him back to the US. So these FBI agents have like 7 days to like scramble to find something like concrete, like here's proof. So while they're interviewing him, they raid his apartment and they confiscate basically everything in the apartment. And what they find is bags and bags full of tapes. This guy was a big videographer. They find plenty of VHS tapes. And those videos that were confiscated from his apartment are never to be seen ever again. Where did those go? I don't know. Who knows where they went? I think 2 years after 9/11, this family created a lawsuit against the Saudi national government for $1 trillion in an effort to like bankrupt the Saudi kingdom. 20 years go by. Beginning of this year, I think it was May of this year, a judge finally said, okay, there's enough evidence here to proceed with the case against the Saudi national government. Let's proceed. 23 years in the making. So in that, a lot of evidence was uncovered that the FBI got from Omar al-Bayouni's apartment 10 days after 9/11. So I'll show you a video. This is, I want to say, the summer of 1999. This is a video that Omar al-Bayoumi took. The DC trip is what it's called. Oh, beloved, esteemed brothers, a greeting to you from Omar al-Bayoumi. We greet you, the esteemed brothers, and we welcome you from Washington. I will get over there and I'll report to you in detail what is there. There are cars. There are cars. You said that in the plan. Whoa. What plan? Who said what about what plan? But they're filming what was assumed to be, you remember United 93 was the 4th hijacked plane that never made it to its destination because its passengers overtook the plane and it was assumed that the plane was going to the capital. Isn't this guy doing like a case study video? Like he's scoping out the area, he's scoping out the capital 2 years before 9/11? And he's saying, you said that in the plan? Who is he talking to? What plan? And then, of course, we went on a 20-year war in 2 countries, Iraq and Afghanistan. Brown University estimated financial costs, $8 trillion over a span of 20 years. Our tax dollars, not to sound like that guy, but our tax dollars going to fund a largely senseless war, shall we say. An estimated, because it's hard to account for every person, an estimated 900,000 deaths in the 20-year war. Close to 1 million people dead. Largely civilian deaths, actually. Innocent civilian deaths. Bystanders, people who were just happened to be in a country that was invaded. People that have no ill will or ill intent died as a result of the American war on terror. People that were in charge of retaliation post 9/11 decided, why don't we kill 2 birds in 1 stone? George Bush gave his famous The War of Good versus Evil, which is basically anyone against the US and coalition forces is evil. Terrorism is evil. So if you're not with us, you're against us. Whether you're one country away or you're on the other side of the globe. And Iraq is just like a perfect example of how horrible the retaliation was, I guess, organized. Because we went to Iraq saying these guys have weapons of mass destruction. It was a complete lie. Factually, it's factually a lie. So the hundreds of thousands of people that died there. A lot of bad people died in Afghanistan as well. A lot of bad people died in Iraq, but I don't know the exact percentage. I don't think anyone has the exact ratio, but I would have to say probably 85, 15, 85 innocent people that died, 15% people that were bad people. So that's it. Show the crowd, show the crowd.